Alright, well, everyone, we've got breaking news that we have to cover first today. My apologies for being a little bit late, but I slept in. I was fucking exhausted after all the gardening from yesterday. I needed a good nap. Fani Willis is going to be able to remain on the Fulton County RICO case. There's one caveat, though. She has to fire Nathan Wade, the prosecutor that she's been screwing this whole time. Here's my problem. I do appreciate that it solves for the current conflict of interest where you have a couple, they were in a personal, sexual, romantic relationship. And so the DA and one of the prosecutors, who was paid more than his contemporaries, are in cahoots together in the explicit sense. Takes care of that. That's perfectly fine. So bravo for that particular part of the decision. But it's still a problem. See, it's a band-aid on a gaping wound. I've talked about that concept in other contexts before, like with the NSA spying, where the government said, okay, yeah, we've been violating everyone's Fourth Amendment rights for years now. No harm, no foul, though. Everything's okay. We'll have private companies hold the data for us and then simply subpoena it. Of course, you don't really need a subpoena to get a company to work with you because they don't want no problems, they don't want no trouble, and we all know that. We've seen this with the Twitter files as well. The solution was minuscule compared to the problem. It didn't really solve most of the core of the problem in the first place, in other words. We've seen this many times before. The problem is, does this get to the central principle that Fani Willis, who is going to be allowed to continue prosecuting Trump, committed perjury, which she did? Does it get to the crux of the problem of the corruption and the lying between Willis, Wade, and of course under questioning, testifying under oath repeatedly and lying, perjuring themselves? It doesn't actually solve the problem. The problem is that the people that are attempting to persecute Trump in this case are deeply corrupt. They lied multiple times under oath, and they should not be allowed to proceed forward with the case. The judge is probably doing this partially for political reasons. Let's say that you're Judge McAfee. And so Fulton is trying to sue Trump and the co-defendants under this wild-ass RICO case, which probably won't even, succeed in the end anyway. Basically wasting everyone's time. Let's say you're doing that. You're looking at and judges aren't supposed to do this, but much like with SCOTUS they do, and I've mentioned that before as well. I'm looking at the political wins, and I'm saying, look, if I do drop this probably ill-fated case, what's going to happen to me? I might be persecuted as well. I might face protests. There might be mass protests as the result of this. And I don't want any problems, so I'm just going to allow it to play out in this court, and we'll see what happens. That's probably what we're seeing here. Judicial cowardice, in other words. Under normal circumstances, if the prosecution is deeply tainted, the case ends up getting dropped like a hot potato because there's no way to proceed without a prejudiced jury. You've got that the element of corruption itself can negate the validity of the case. So let's say that somebody did commit a crime, that they're alleged to have committed fraud or something like that, and it turns out that the prosecutor and the DA in the case, etc., are sleeping together and going on business meetings together and bilking taxpayers for hundreds of thousands of dollars doing so, etc., etc. Under most auspices, the case would be dropped. The case would be invalidated, and you say, look, I mean, you're trying to prosecute the case, but the people that opened up this prosecution are themselves criminals, effectively. How the hell is it supposed to proceed legally? It wouldn't even make any sense. But Orange Man bad. Because of the fact that it is Donald Trump, and because of that fact alone, is this case allowed to continue. In the end, even the liberals are not particularly committed to believing that it's going to pan out for them, legally speaking. The RICO case is overburdensome, overbroad. This has been mentioned even by liberal commentators that genuinely hate Trump. They hate the dude, but they were shaking their heads at the case. They're like, no, go after him on the business fraud, go after him on the Mar-a-Lago documents, but Jesus Christ, you're getting into some weird, murky waters here. And then, of course, you've got the Letitia James and Judge Engeron case. That was just a civil one, and it's been appealed. I mean, he posted bond, so we'll see what happens. I have a feeling that his appeal will be shot down, and he'll be found liable, and he'll appeal again, and, you know, they'll be in perpetuity or something like that. Same with the Jean Carroll case. Basically, they're just trying to take all of Trump's money because they're afraid of him. That's what all these cases boil down to. They want him in a jail cell, penniless. They want to humiliate, wreck, and ruin him and his entire family. And that's all that these cases are for. They're not for justice. They're not for getting a long-term con man to pay restitution to the society that he repeatedly defrauded. That's not what's happening here. You didn't even have a real plaintiff in the New York case. There was none. It was the state of New York claiming that Donald Trump did something wrong. There was no other litigant in that case. The banks, the businesses, etc. that Trump worked with said, no, everything's perfectly fine and hunky-dory. Some of them even testified in his defense. Somehow he was still found liable for an inordinate sum of money that arguably violates the Constitution as being cruel and unusual, actually. Definitely an excessive bail, by the way, or bond, rather, in that particular case with Jean Carroll. It makes no sense whatsoever. Donald Trump is being persecuted. Fani Willis is corrupt. Jack Smith is corrupt. Alvin Bragg, well, he's a little bit less corrupt, which is why he's slow-walking his case and appears very nonchalant about it. He rarely even weighs in on his own potentially major case. He was the one that broke the ice, too. He was the one that was tasked with starting the ball rolling. That was the first case against Trump. The first legal case of that kind against a former president of the United States in U.S. history that could actually lead to jail time. I would note, by the way, precedent setting. Well, that precedent will be misused in the future, unfortunately. It'll probably lead to some bad things down the road. Fani Willis should not be allowed to remain on the case. If you want to continue the case itself, ill-fated as though it probably again will be, then get a different person to actually do the prosecuting. Because the people that were in the lead in the prosecution are desperately corrupt. They lied. I mean, imagine you're the judge. Your court is being lied to by the district attorney. It's being lied to by the lead prosecutor on the case. They lie about the relationship. They lie about bills that were paid and funding and things like that. They lied nonstop during their testimony. We know this. We've got plenty of countervailing evidence against them. And yet you still allow that individual on the case as long as they divest themselves of their fuck buddy? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. That's about all. Peace out.